Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this next video lesson. We're going to continue talking about strings, and what I want to do is I want to take a string of text that's entered by the user and encrypt it in some way. And the only way for me to do that is to use this ASCII character table. So ASCII stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. Basically, it's an institute that has established a standard. You think that you type in the letter A on your keyboard, but really that letter A is really 97. So we call this the character. We call this the ASCII value. Or put another way, this is a decimal value. If you typed in capital R on your keyboard, well, really that's the value 82 that you just typed on your keyboard. Okay. So here's my idea. My name is Robert. So that first letter, R, is worth 82. Let me add 10 to it. So that becomes 92. And instead of broadcasting the R, I broadcast a backslash. The next letter of my name is O, and that is 111. 111 plus 10 is going to be 121. So I broadcast the letter Y, and so forth and so on. So I'm broadcasting 10 plus whatever the character is, and therefore I'm encrypting the message. I'd like to do this real time. I have a text box on the top, I have a text box on the bottom, and we're using this idea of the ASCII character table. We're taking every single one of these characters, converting them into their ASCII value, adding 10, and then broadcasting what that new character is, right? The character representation of that ASCII value. Okay, so that sounds like fun. Let's do that. So let's go ahead and create a C# program, Windows Forms application. So we'll say C#, and we're still working with strings, and we're going to call this the Encoded message project. Just encoded message, that's fine. All right, we're going to give it a couple of seconds, and then we're going to add 2 text boxes, and that's it. No button, no label. So first, let me just add 1 text box and modify it, and then I'll just simply copy and paste it. So here's a text box. Let me go ahead and just paste it over here. Now, I want to be able to enter multiple lines. Like I want to be able to type, space, type, space, press enter, and go to the next line. So we're going to make sure that this text box is able to go multiple lines. So you'll notice that with the text box selected, you'll see multi-line. So for multi-line, we're going to change that from false to true. Well, now that I've changed multi-line to true, notice that I can resize this text box. So I'll take the text box, move it to the upper left-hand corner, and let me resize it so it looks something like this. Say, for example, that's okay. Now, it is possible that I'm going to be typing several lines and that it's going to go off screen, or it's going to go off the text box that's displayed. So what I'll do is I'll go to the scroll bars section, and you'll notice that for scroll bars it says none. But one of the options is vertical. So change the scroll bars to vertical, and now you'll see that scroll bar indication right here. Okay? And that's what I want. I want this thing to be able to type text as much as I want, and it's going to go off screen as I'm scrolling. So don't run the program. Let me just show you what it looks like right now. Okay, so let me just type enter, hit enter, and so watch what happens as it goes off screen. It just scrolls off screen. And so I can just go over here, scroll back up. Okay, that's the behavior that I want. All right, so now let me go ahead and give this guy a name, and I'll call this txt message. So over here in the name property, txt message. And then I'll just simply take this guy, copy and paste it, Control-C, Control-V as in Victor, put it over here underneath, because see what's going to happen is I'm going to type my message, And then down here, we're going to see the encoding of that message. So for this bottom text box, we're going to call that txt result. So this guy, txt result. Let me go ahead and close the form. It doesn't have to be so wide. Something like that. I'm going to get rid of the minimize and the maximize box. Minimize box and maximize box, both of those set to false. And then we'll type in for the caption here, instead of form one, we'll say coded message. So coded message. And then, of course, don't forget to save your work by clicking this guy over here, Save All. All right. Well, now that we have our text boxes, any time that this text box changes with new characters, I want to reflect the change immediately over here. So what happens when you double click on a text box? See, typically you double click on buttons or radio buttons. Let's go ahead and double click on this top text box. And that's still, of course, going to take you to the code area. It's going to take you to this section over here called text changed. So in other words, as there are changes, so that means pressing letters, numbers, spacebar, backspace, anything that changes via a keyboard pressed, it's going to go to this function and it's going to perform a change. Okay? All right, but before I do that, what I'd like to do is create a function that I give you a parameter and you are going to change the ASCII value for that particular parameter. You're going to change, like say for example, I give you the letter R and you're going to give me the backslash. That's what I want this function to do. So what I want you to do is to press enter a couple of times after your txt message text change, but of course you're still inside of the class, right? So there's the beginning of the class, here's the end of the class, you're right here. Make sure you don't put your cursor underneath this curly braces or this curly braces. It's got to be right here. And let's go ahead and create a private function. This thing is going to return a character. It's called encode the message. And it receives a string parameter. Okay, now the reason why we have that red squiggly underline is we haven't returned anything. Remember, our job is going to be to return a character. We haven't returned anything yet, so that's why we see this red squiggly underline. Okay, so you remember how functions work. We call this, we give it something, it's going to return something, namely a character. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's declare a variable called ASCII value. And what happens is we'll take that ASCII value and we're going to convert that by, or not convert it, we're going to add 10 to it. Like if I gave you R, whatever R is, I'm going to add 10 to it, and then I'm going to want to convert that back into a character. Okay. Now, Visual Studio, I shouldn't say Visual Studio, CSharp, it makes it almost impossible to easily convert from an ASCII to a character or a character to an ASCII. Visual Basic, on the other hand, makes it extremely easy to do that. There's a function called ASC, which stands for ASCII. There's a function called CHR, which stands for character, right? And it makes it really nice so that there's a conversion from one to the other. But C# doesn't have such an easy function. So what I want to do is I want to use the Visual Basic function, CHR for character, ASC for ASCII. How do I do that? How do I bring in a function from a different language, like Visual Basic, and use it in my program? Okay. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, let's go ahead and open up the Solution Explorer. And go ahead and click that push pin right there so you keep it intact. If you don't have the Solution Explorer over here to the side, you can just simply click View and then Solution Explorer. And then you'll see this. With the Solution Explorer open, you'll see references. So we'll go ahead and click that triangle and you'll see all the references. And basically these are some of the different tools that you can use within C#. All right, I want to add a new reference called Visual Basic. I'm going to include all those Visual Basic options in my C# program. So you're going to right click on top of references. Let me do that again in case you missed it. Move your mouse pointer on top of references, right click, and then you'll see an Add Reference option. So we're going to click on Add Reference. Now that I've selected Add Reference, you'll see all of these. It might take a second or two to load on your screen, but eventually you'll see all of these items. And right over here, I see Visual Basic. So where it says Microsoft Visual Basic, you'll notice that there is no check mark here. I want you to place a check mark right there. So locate Visual Basic, click on check mark, and now you're done, and you can click OK. So what this does is it brings in all of the Visual Basic functionality into your C# program. So I click OK. All right, so here's the Visual Basic. I don't need this anymore. I just wanted to show you this. And also you have to right click it to be able to add that reference. So I don't need the Solution Explorer. I can go ahead and hide that. But one of the things now that I can do is the following. All right, I'm going to take that ASCII value that you gave to me. I'm going to take that string's ASCII value, and I'm going to add 10 to it, like we had discussed over here. If I enter the letter R, that's 82. 82 plus 10 is 92. I'm going to return that backslash. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay. So how am I going to do that? Microsoft, tab, Visual Basic, tab, strings, tab, and then ASCII. There it is. What does this thing do? It returns an integer value representing the character code corresponding to the character. Yep, that's what I want. I want to be able to give you the letter R, and you're going to give me the backslash. I want to be able to give you any character, and you're going to return to me the corresponding value. But here's what I want to do. First of all, I will give to you what was sent to me. Okay, so let's say that the letter R for Robert was sent to you. Okay, so I will give you that. But that's not all I want you to do. I want you to add 10. Remember, we're trying to encrypt our message. So we're trying to take this guy over here, R, which is 82, add 10 to it, and then I'm going to return the backslash. So we've just added 10 over here. Now I want to return the character version of that. So if it was 82, 82 plus 10 is 92. What is 92 in its character form? Well, let me see here. That is the backslash, 92. That's what I want to return, the character. All right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to return Microsoft.VisualBasic.strings, and the function that's really easy to use is this guy, CHR. What does this thing do? It returns the character associated with the specified character code. So I don't know if you could see this over here. It says int. You give me the integer representation of that character, and what am I going to give back to you? A character. You give me the 82, I'll give you the backslash. So what I'm going to give to you is a number. See, I have to give you an integer, and I have that integer. It's called ASCII value. So when I call this function, I give it a letter. It takes that letter, converts it to ASCII, adds 10 to that ASCII value, and then it converts that new ASCII value back to a character. Does that make sense? Okay, it's a cool little function right here. All I have to do is just send a character. And by the way, the space bar is a character. The space bar is 32. 32 plus 10 is 42. 42, oh, that's the asterisk. Right? How about when I press enter? Yeah, you know what enter is? Enter is new line, and it's also carriage return. Now, that's borrowing language from typewriters. Now, all of you are way too young to know what a typewriter is. You've probably seen pictures of it, or maybe if you go to the Huntington Beach Museum, you see one of those over there, or Huntington Beach, the Huntington Museum. A typewriter is a piece of paper placed onto a cylindrical carriage. So when you get to the end of your page and you want to go to the beginning of the next line, there was a handle. When you pull on the handle, the carriage rotates, and then when you go all the way, that's the carriage return and the line feed. So two things are happening. You're going to the beginning of the page, and you're rotating the carriage to go to the next line. So we call that carriage return, CR, and line feed, LF. The value of that is 10. The value of that is 13. So it's the key that has two things, two values associated with it. If I press the number 1 on the keyboard, well, that's really not number 1. It's really ASCII 49. Right? If I, let me see, hashtag, right? Where's the hashtag? Oh, here it is. Hashtag on your keyboard, that's really 35. Okay. When I press the delete button on your keyboard, that's really 127. So all your keys have an ASCII value. And then, of course, you can go from there and get crazy with some of these extended keyboard codes. Yes?
What's going to happen to our code if we put like 1 was too high and we get crazy characters?
Yep, that's exactly right. And that's okay. Because then what we'll do is if we get crazy characters, then we're just simply going to subtract by 10. Right? So for example, let's say that I enter the letter Z. Well, Z is really 122. 122 plus 10 is 132. So we'll get some crazy character. Not necessarily this character, but we'll get some crazy character. And then if I want to decode, I just simply say 132 minus 10, that's 122. And so that'll return that letter Z back to me. Yeah, so it's okay. All right, so and remember that, okay? Remember that enter is really line feed, which is 10, and 13, which is carriage return. It's two things when you press enter on the keyboard. We have to take that into consideration. All right, so I have this cool little function that's going to take into consideration the conversion, and it encrypts it at the same time. Now let's go back to our txt message underscore text change function. Let me create a variable called temp. Text result, text. Let's set that to nothing, quote, quote. We're going to clear previous results. So in other words, every time there is a button that's pressed, this text box is going to be updated, right? Text changed. So don't do anything. Let me just show you what I'm talking about here. So if I go over here to start, so ROBERT, that's 6 changes that have taken place. Every time I do this, it's calling this function. Every time I touch a key on the keyboard, it's doing that. Now, I'm not going to have you do this, but let me just go ahead and type in some garbage here. Notice what happens. This is txt result. Now I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to hit the space bar. Did you see how it blanked everything out? Because that's what I'm telling you to do. I'm telling you every time a change happens over here, clear it and then reestablish what it's supposed to be. Okay. All right. So what do I need to do? I need to go through every single character that was typed over here, encrypt it, and display it over here. So take the R, display it as an encrypted form. Take the O, display it. Take the B, redisplay it, so forth and so on for every single character. All right, so we'll just use a for statement. Now watch this. FOR, press the tab button. As you can see over here, it says tab twice for the for snippet. Tab, tab. Oh, good. So it's creating a letter I as my counter. Now I don't have to have that letter I. I can do whatever I want. I could change that to counter or any other variable that I want. I'll leave it like that. I will be my counter. Now in terms of the length, okay, keep on looping as long as for my text message dot text dot length. as long as you are less than the length of the message, then you can keep on looping. So if I typed in Robert, Robert is R-O-B-E-R-T, that's 6 characters. As long as the counter is less than 6, then keep on going. And that actually makes sense because remember, I'm going to type a comment, then I'm going to erase it, so you can just watch the show. Let's see here. If I do something like this, and let me just copy and paste, and let me just type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, say for example. Let's say the string that I typed in is Robert. So R is in the 0 index, O is in the 1 index, B is in the 2 index, and so forth and so on. Okay. So where is R located? At 0, which notice what my counter is starting off at, 0. I'm saying as long as this counter I is less than the length of the text in the text box. Well, what is the length of the text in the text box? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As long as I is less than 6. All right. Is 0 less than 6? Yeah. 1, yeah. 2, 3, 4. Is 5 less than 6? Yes. So do you see that because we started at 0, as long as that's less than, now this is wrong, less than or equal to. That's wrong. We want to do less than because remember our starting counting point is from 0. Yeah. Okay? So that's just the idea to consider. Now let's do this. Yes?
When I try and right-click on references to get Visual Basic, I get an error saying the operation should not be completed, no such interface supported.
Okay, after class I can help you out. Yeah, so just watch the show for right now. All right, so what I'll do is I'll take temp, we'll type in Microsoft, .Visual Basic, .strings, .ASCII, which remember what this thing does? It returns an integer value representing the character code. So I give you a character, as you can see over here. I give you a character, and you are going to return an integer. So ASCII, that's what I want. All right, well, what is it that I'm going to want to convert? So let me put the open and close parentheses over here, and I'll put a semicolon over there, go back over here. We're going to take that message. We're going to take the text, and I want a specific character. Like if I typed in Robert, will give me the R first, then give me the O, then give me the B, and so forth and so on. Well, that means I'm going to have to use substring. So based on that counter, wherever you want me to start from, give me only one character, close parentheses. So what does this thing do? Well, let me just type a comment, and then I'm going to erase it. Well, the first thing it does is it says, okay, so I, as you can see, is 0. You know that the R is located at the 0 position. Then I is going to be incremented, and so that means that I is now 1. So it says, starting from position 1, give me the next character. Starting from position 1, give me 1 character. All right, then I is going to increment to 2. Starting from position 2, oh, that's right here, give me 1 character. So that's the B. Then I gets incremented to 3. Starting from position 3, give me 1 character, and so forth and so on. So this is basically just saying, give me 1 character, that's what that 1 represents, and then the I represents starting from. Right? So in essence, we're doing this. We're going to capture this, then we're going to capture this, then we're going to capture this, and so forth and so on. We're going to capture each one of those. Okay, so it is a letter that I've captured. Now, let's go back to this discussion about when you press the enter on your keyboard, really 2 things have been placed onto the keyboard buffer. ASCII 10, which is new line, and ASCII 13, which is carriage return. So we're going to have to deal with that. So we'll say if text message dot text dot substring at this particular location, grab 1 character. If that thing is, grab 1 character. If that thing is equal to, quote, \n, close quote. Okay, what that means is this. You have various escape sequences from your C# language. They're borrowed from the C programming language. Anything with a backslash, we call that an escape sequence. So enter on your keyboard is the same thing as \n. \t is like pressing tab on your keyboard. \b is like pressing backspace on your keyboard. So there's a bunch of these, right? We call these escape sequences. What we're asking here is, did you detect that the user pressed the enter key? Specifically, \n, as you can see over here, that's the carriage return. LF, that's the line feed. Well, if that's the case, then here's what I want you to do. On the txt result text box, which is this guy down here, right? Don't double click that. On that bottom text box, here's what I'm going to set you to. Whatever is currently inside there, and I'm going to have you concatenate environment.newline. So in other words, if you picked up a new line character from this top text box as you're reading your characters, the way that I'm going to have you interpret that is on the bottom text box, you are going to concatenate a new line. All right, then I'm going to say else if the text message .text .substring I, 1. If you picked up the line, oh, hold on for a second here. Where's equal? There it is. If you picked up \r. Okay, \n, \r. What the heck are those? I already called them escape sequences. So we'll say escape sequences. All right, so we have various languages here, so we'll just say C++. I know we're C# programmers, but just so I can show you really fast here. Okay, it looks like \n is the line feed. Let's see here, \r is the carriage return. And remember, when you press enter on your keyboard, those two are what are flooded or pushed onto the keyboard buffer. So over here, I'm asking for the \r. Did you get the carriage return, which means go to the beginning of the line. This is go to the next line. This is go to the beginning of the line. Both of these combined is go to the beginning of the next line. Okay, so if that's the case, I want nothing to happen. So we'll just say text box result.text is simply text box result.text. In other words, do nothing, because line feed carriage return has already been detected. Oh, I forgot to put a semicolon over there. I'm just putting the text, I'm just basically setting txt result to txt result. I don't have to do anything. So then, hey, why do this if nothing is happening? All right, so imagine that you have a tube from your paper towel roll and the cardboard tube inside. Okay, so I'm going to pull the cardboard tube out. And then I have a billiard ball that I'm going to push into it that says \n, and you know that \n, that's the line feed. Okay, so I push the \n into the cardboard. Well, there's also a \r, because remember I told you when you press enter, those two characters, \r and \n, line feed and carriage return, which we also know as ASCII 10 and ASCII 13. That 10 and that 13, there's a billiard ball with a 10, there's a billiard ball with a 13 in the cardboard tube. Well, how do I flush out those billiard balls? I gotta rotate the cardboard tube so that they fall out, right? Okay, so I got the \r, but did I get the \n? See, so you got to flood the keyboard buffer. You got to flush it, I should say. So the first time around, if you pick up a \n, all right, treat that as a new line for your text box. But we also have that \r that's in the buffer. We got to get rid of that. So I just simply allow the text box to be assigned to itself, but the counter increments one more. So in other words, what we're doing is, let me just write a comment over here. If I said ROBERT, and then I'm just going to put \r\n, but you know what that means. I'm sorry, \n\r. You know what that means. What I really did was I pressed enter. Okay, but the way that it's represented in the keyboard buffer is like this, \n\r. So I just read the ROBERT. I just read this guy, this if statement. Takes care of that. But don't we have to read this guy right here to get rid of it? You know that both of these together is pressing enter on the keyboard, and so that's why this end if statement over here just says, when you do get to the \r, well, I already handled going to the beginning of the next line with this environment.new line, so I don't have to do it again. So when we get to this guy over here, just simply ignore it, and that's exactly what's taking place in this else if statement. Okay, so now that we've taken care of that, the last thing to do is an else statement, txt result.text. What are we going to do? I'm going to give you that same text box, but I want you to concatenate the new character that I'm about to encode. How do I encode? Well, I created a function called encode that message, or encode the message. What do I need to send to you? Well, if I typed in the letter R, then I need to send you that character alone within the word Robert. And then I need to send you the letter O within the word Robert. And then I need to send you the letter B within Robert, and so forth and so on. So within that text box, message.text.substring, I'm going to send to you this particular character and only one. That only one character that I'm grabbing is what I'm going to send to you. So it goes over here to this message. I typed in Robert. It's going to grab the 0 character, because that's what I is at first. I is 0. And you know that that's Robert. Let me type this again. You don't have to type this. This is just for your benefit. ROBERT 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I is originally going to be 0. From this text box, get a chunk of that string, specifically the one starting at position 0, and I only want one character starting at position 0. Okay, so starting at position 0, he wants one character, so it gives him the R. Then we go through this for statement. I gets incremented. It was 0, now it's 1. So now this thing is, hey, give me a chunk of the string starting at position 1. Okay, starting at position 1. And I only want one character, so I grab the O. And then I grab the B. And then I grab the E, and so forth and so on. This thing is going to grab those letters. It's going to call this function. What does this function do? It takes that letter, it converts it into its ASCII character, adds 10 to it, and then returns back the character. Put another way, you gave me the letter R. I'm going to convert that to an 82. I'm going to add 10 to that. I'm going to convert that back to a backslash, and I'm going to send you the backslash. Okay, are you guys ready to do some secret work and type some secret messages? Here we go. So let's start the program. Robert Solis is an instructor at Citrus College. Period. Enter. He has been working there for 17 years. Period. Isn't that cool? Now you take this, you send it, and unless the person knows that the key is 10, this looks like gibberish. Right? Isn't that cool? So all you did was you took the character value, added 10, and then send whatever that conversion is. Now let's verify if this is correct. By the way, I don't like this. The font is too small. I can barely see this. So let me close this. Let me increase the size of the font. So we'll go to Properties. And for this text box, let's say, what is it? 8 points, that's too small. Let me make this 16. And I'll change this over here to 16 as well. You can change it to whatever you want. I'm blind here, so I can't see it. Okay, run the program again. Okay, so Robert, enter, Solis. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. First of all, the letter capital R. Let's see, what is that? Capital R, that is plus 10, that's the backslash. Yep, there it is. O, let's see here. O is 111 plus 10, that's going to be 121. That should be the letter Y. Yep, that's the letter Y. How about T? Okay, so T, that's 116 plus 10 is 126, so that should be a tilde. Yep, there's the tilde. I pressed enter, so it goes to the beginning of the next line. Capital S. Okay, so capital S is 83 plus 10 is 93, and that's the closing square braces, or closing square bracket. There it is. How about that lowercase s? Lowercase s is 115. 115 plus 10 is 125, and that's the closing curly braces, and that's why you see the closing curly braces. So in other words, whatever message you type, it's going to encode it. You can press enter, you can press tab, you can press whatever you want, and the encoding takes place here. Yes?
Can you go back
To the code?
to the table?
Oh, the table, yes.
I was wondering why W doesn't show anything.
The letter W?
Yeah, I thought maybe because it corresponds to delete, but
Let's see what
it
happens here.
doesn't correspond to delete, so I'm wondering
Okay.
why it's wrong.
First of all, let me type in this. By the way, if I type in R space, O space, B space. Okay, so it looks like the asterisk is coming up for space, and that's because 32, which is the space bar, plus 10 is 42, and so that's an asterisk, so that's why that's coming up. But you're saying the letter W?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me type in a W, and it doesn't look like anything's coming up, but let me hit a space bar, and then W space, W space. Well, let's see what's going on. So it looks like the letter W is 119. 119 plus 10 is 129, and 129 is this funny character, so that's why it's not displaying. It doesn't know how to display that. So it looks like we have to modify our program. What we can do is we can modify our program so that if we entered a letter like W, we can add 10 to this and then just go back to the beginning of the ASCII character table. So what we could do is this. Let me add 10 to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what we have to do is we have to go back to all of our printable characters, and in this case it would display a quote for the letter W. And we haven't done that, but that's how we could resolve that problem. Because yeah, you're right, any of these letters, they go into over here and looks like something squirrely happens. It won't display it. Okay? All right, so this at least gives you the idea of how we can take the ASCII character table. We can also take a very simple function like ASCII, and we can also take character from Visual Basic. And but of course, before we did that, we had to go to the Solution Explorer under References, and we had to make sure to add. So we add a new reference, and that new reference had to have been the Visual Basic reference. That allows you to use some of these different Visual Basic tools, which are really easy to use, since there's nothing really available in C#. And then just perform the necessary components, calling a function to be able to do that conversion. Our key was 10, but it can be whatever you want. Right? And that's it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.